I'm Kat.
I'm Rachel.
We are the Pandemonium.
Oh, good morning.
Oh, good morning.
I slept all the way through the night. Mind you, this is coming out on my birthday. Today is my birthday episode.
Well, happy birthday.
I know, thank you so much. Again, we record these episodes way in advance. What has happened? Josh wanted to schedule a 4D ultrasound, and I said absolutely not, because it's weird.
I mean, you're not wrong. It's weird, but also cool at the same time. Unless you get like a front photo and then you're just like, yeah, no, that's still weird.
Well, I mean, we got the face, which you saw. Baby is super cute, has my nose, has my lips. I love my husband, but his lips are so thin. So the baby's going to have cute little Cupid's bow lips. But
hopefully Josh's eyes, so that way they don't have to wear glasses.
Because I'm blind as hell, man. And he's like,
same though.
Right. And he's like, be prepared for the baby to come out looking like a Q-tip. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, this is my cousin. He's directly related. They're friends on Facebook, prior military. And I was like, oh, okay. He's a good looking lad. Like, he's not you, but he's like, this is his son. Stark white hair. Just reflective, practically fluorescent. And I'm just sitting there going, my baby's going to come out with black hair. I already know it.
Because your genetics runs very strong.
I think the baby's going to come out with black hair and blue eyes, to be honest. Or black hair and very, very light eyes.
As long as it doesn't come out with blue hair and black eyes, then we have a lot of questions.
Well, I mean, we are dyeing my hair blue for the baby shower, which you're going to help me with, right?
Of course.
Okay. All right. Just making sure. He's like, are you going to do it on this day? And I was like, no, the baby shower is not until Saturday. We're going to dye my hair Wednesday. So it's done. And I was like, she can stay at home. She doesn't have to go to the ultrasound appointment. He's like, oh, she's probably going to go. And I was like, why would she want to go? And he's like, why wouldn't she want to go? And I was like, oh, fair.
I mean, I am auntie, so I mean, it's fair.
You know. So I'm not going to choose anything nice for my birthday. As we both know, we remember last year's fiasco with me having an argument with Emily. I decided not to pick something as gruesome, but I still picked something pretty terrible for my birthday.
It happens. You have a bad picker gestured towards list of exes.
Whoa.
Okay, mine's not much better, so I mean,
Hot?
best relationships are the ones we're currently in, so I mean.
Well, that was fun.
Yay, random ass phone calls.
So my doctor retired. I am currently, while we're filming this, I'm on day 74 of our 90-day countdown. And I'm like, okay, I'm really excited. I'm really like gung ho, ready to go. And he's like, by the way, I'm retiring. And I was like, listen here, you little. Why? And he's like, I just finished my 8 years. So I'm going to go ahead and throw in the towel.
Get out before things start hitting the fan.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
But also, I wanted to burst out with, it's the final countdown.
Anyways, I'm seeing all of the OBGYNs that they have at their disposal for high risk, which they have 6. So that's fun. Meeting a whole plethora of doctors. They're all quite nice. Which is, a great change from anyways, back on track. So hot kettle black. I tend to choose pretty bad friends, present company excluded. And it tends to come back and bite me in the butt. That includes exes and a bunch of other things. But today is something that I didn't think I'd ever research about because it's Australia. And that's pretty far away from here. And you know me, I love some oddball cases. This is one of those ones where it heralds us back to Fred and Rose West from last season. And we did a double episode, one on Friday, one on Saturday episode. This is not going to be one of those things. So, trigger warning.
This is a Pandemonium Witches podcast. Trigger warning. The following episode contains graphic violence and gruesome depictions. Listener discretion is advised.
Be prepared. This has to do with schmurder, violating in the worst instances, schmexual assault, and a lot more. So just prepare yourselves. So the case we're covering today is something I didn't hear about before, but it's been covered on Tubi, the free app. Crime Investigation Australia. YouTubers Binna J Crime, Danielle Halen, and True Crime Conversation, and podcasts such as the Serial Holic podcast with Dave Jerry and Once Upon a Crime. I didn't really find a lot of other people who covered it, including our queen. She has not covered it. And we don't mean Charlotte Dobre. We mean Bailey Sarian, because we love both of them very much. Today we're talking about the Moorhouse Murderers.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Now, Moorhouse is not the last name, and you are quite welcome. Moorhouse is where they lived. So today's TLDR is David John Birnie and Catherine Margaret Birnie were an Australian couple from Perth who murdered 4 women in their home in 1986, which were also caught while attempting to unalive their 5th. These crimes were referred to in the press as the Moorhouse Murderers after the Birnie's, address at 3 Moorhouse Street in Willigee, suburb of Perth, Australia, was discovered to house.
Did you say fish or 5th, like in between 4th and 6th? Okay.
It's like
I heard fish, and so that's why I was like, wait, what? I need to adjust my hearing.
No, 5th, like the intercostal rib, the junction where you get to the heart.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Mind you, the bodies were not found in the house. The bodies were found somewhere else, but there was evidence. So as we do with all of our cases, we're starting from the very beginning. Thank you, Julie Andrews. David John Birnie. So today we don't have names or nicknames for these people because, as most cases do when they make me upset, I can't find nicknames. I can't find joy in the moment because I'm just so angry. Because she has my name. Not my legit name, but she has my first name. Starts with a C. So we have David John Birnie, who was born February 16th, 1951. And he was an Aquarius, which is a water sign. Just to show you a picture of him. So as you can see, not the best looking bunch. No. Not only are Aquariuses independent, compassionate, forward thinking, they are also very unpredictable, rebellious, and seem detached. Those born on February 16th are deeply curious, often live in their heads, and are constantly analyzing the world. And then they have his accomplice, which is his wife, or supposedly white. We'll get to that. Catherine Margaret Harrison Birnie, May 23rd, 1951. She is still alive. She is a Gemini. Not only are they open-minded, excuse me, sir, that's rude. He's rearranging his room. Open-minded, curious, communicative, but also dispersed, inconsistent. Those born on May 23rd are characterized by a deep need for mental stimulation and variety. So we're going to start with David because he was born before Catherine just a little bit. So we're just going to start with him and go from there. You all right with that?
I mean, I'm here for the episode, so I don't really have a choice if I'm all right with it or not. Let's just keep going.
Rip the Band-Aid off. So, David Birnie is the first of 5 children to an alcoholic mother and physically handicapped father who lived in what was a
Rural
suburb in eastern Perth. He was the oldest of 5 children and grew up in, get this, city's name is Wattle Grove.
Some names that people end up naming their towns, I can't.
Listen, I've been to hell in Nebraska. It's a great town. Cute little town. It's adorable. It does freeze during the winter, though.
Of course it does.
I passed through. It was during spring. I was going to a friend's house for a wedding. Anyways, and then the rumors about incest within the family abounded, and the Birnie house was filthy. So Mrs. Birnie swore and was ill-kempt and did not cook family meals and was known to exchange schmexual favors with taxi drivers in lieu of actual payment. There's a picture of his mother. She doesn't exactly look the nicest.
So what you're saying is looks didn't run in their family.
Not at all. Herald's back to the Ken and Barbie killers, and why they became so popular is because of how pretty they were. This guy just was not pretty on the outside or on the inside. So school friends and church acquaintances remember the family as being dysfunctional and subject to quite a lot of rumors involving alcoholism, promiscuity, and enthusiasm. The family never had regular meals together, and his parents didn't cook meals for any of the children. So in the early 1960s, David's parents moved the family to another suburb of Perth. There he met Catherine Harrison through mutual friends. At the time, Catherine was a lonely, motherless 12-year-old living with relatives nearby. David was skinny and small stature and left school where he was continuously picked on and became an apprentice jockey for racehorses because he had the build for it. So at the age of 15, he left school and became an apprentice jockey for Eric Farnham at the nearby Ascot Race Course. Say that 20 times fast. While working at the race course, David gained a disturbing reputation for abusing the horses and engaging in acts of exhibitionism.
I wish one of the horses would have kicked him, but obviously that didn't happen, unfortunately.
Unfortunately not. However, but wait.
Of course there's more. I'm just saying that, seriously, a good solid back hoof to the freaking sternum, done. Problem solved.
Clear!
I'm just saying, I know too much about things.
Well, his behavior ended up escalating when he broke into an elderly woman's room at his boarding house, unclothed, wearing a stocking over his head, and attempted to violate her. After learning about the incident, his employer, of course, fired him. Fabulous. We love that. One night, nope, already did that. By the time he was an adolescent, David had been in and out of prison for several misdemeanors and felonies. And as an adult, he became addicted to schmegsual prolification and pornography and was considered a paraphiliac. Do you know what this is?
I don't, but of course he became obsessed with these kind of things because they always do.
They do. In the cases that we've researched, the ones that are that they target women and girls the way that they do, they become addicted to corn. So, paraphilic. You ready? Glad you asked because I had no idea and I decided to deep dive on that. So, a paraphiliac is someone with an intense, persistent, and unconventional schmegsual arousal and attraction to objects.
I could have gone the rest of my life not knowing about that. Thank you.
You're welcome. It also includes situations or individuals that are not typically schmegsual in nature, like vacuum cleaners, toilet paper rolls, car exhausts.
And unfortunately, none of them end up cutting themselves off because they continue to do it.
While not involving non-consenting partners or causing distress, i.e. paraphilitic disorders, they are distinguished from normal or normophilic schmegsual interests by their specific focus, which can be including solitary acts or non-traditional stimuli, which includes putting things in places where it shouldn't be, i.e. Mr. Potato Head.
I.e. lots of ER runs because things go up, they don't come back down.
Also, I've noticed as I've been walking out in the sun more, you can actually see my scar port, which I haven't seen in quite a while. That's funny. Anyways, wow. That has not been around in a long time. That's freaking me out. So, In his early 20s, David married his first wife and had a daughter, Tanya, who was age 10 at the time of his arrest. Tanya, who has changed her surname since his capture, has never married and has no children, stating, quote, "I don't want to spawn another David Birnie."
I mean, nobody wants to spawn another David Birnie, but I mean, the fact that there had to be a first one.
I think it's also because of upbringing, too, as well.
I mean, that doesn't help situations at all.
Everybody was stooping everybody else, apparently, in his family. So it was just a giant pork fest.
I mean, with only so much inbreeding, like, look at the Hanover family from Europe. They, all the inbreeding developed monsters, figuratively and literally.
The chins. I couldn't get over the chins on the pictures. I'll find a picture and I'll put it on this episode. It is, look, we are not covered. I'm not doing research on that. If you want to, you can. I'm not doing it because I don't want
It's
to
a
have
lot.
nightmares. No. So his brother would later say that if David did not have sexual relations every night, he would go mad. Once, after a couple nights of going without, David asked his younger brother, same brother that was interviewed, if he could have relations with him. When the teenager declined, he woke up to find David trying to mount him. There is a special place in hell for all of these people.
1,000 times %. And I just, there's so many things I want to say and I don't know where to start.
Let's just keep going because it gets worse. In late 1986, at the time of the unalivings, David was employed at a car wrecker shop in a Perth suburb of Willigee. So, Catherine, we brought her up briefly, right? So, Catherine Birnie was only 2 years old when her mother, Doreen, died, giving birth to her brother, who himself perished only 2 days later. She then moved to South Africa, where she was assaulted by her father before being taken back to Perth by her maternal grandparents. Unable to raise Catherine, her father, Harold, sent her back to live with them. When her strict and isolating grandmother had an epileptic fit, Catherine was shipped off to her aunt and uncle in the inner southwestern Perth suburb of Lathland. That took me a while to learn how to pronounce. At the age of 10, a custody dispute resulted in Harold regaining sole custody of Catherine, who he used as his personal... Yeah, you know what I'm going to say. I'm not even going to say it. So, Catherine ended up meeting David at age 12 and began a romantic and sexual relationship with him 2 years later at 14. 14! You know what I was doing at 14? I was getting blisters on my feet from jelly shoes, and I was doing theater camp, which was after I did fat camp. And what else did I do at 14? 14. I was running around the neighborhood being a hellion. 14. Her father pleaded with her on several occasions to leave David, as her involvement with him led to her getting in trouble with the police, resulting in her being sent to youth prison in adolescence.
The way he's just looking at her in the photo, it just makes me want to barf.
Disgusting. David was a brilliant conversationalist, having read up on everything from politics to science to Egyptian mythology and their structures. He enthralled Catherine. She was immediately smitten, but after 10 years of welfare officers repeatedly removing the neglected Birnie children from their parents due to neglect, all 5 were sent off to different foster homes. David lost touch with Catherine, at least for a little while. So the small Perth community of the mid 1960s, David and Catherine met up again. Catherine had left school to work as a machinist in a factory making window blinds. And in 1969, when they were both 18, David and Catherine faced Perth Police Court. Oh my God. Perth Police Court. Charged with breaking and entering and stealing a safe at a local drive-in theater. David went to prison. Catherine, pregnant with a baby from another man, was put on probation. When David was finally released from prison in mid-1970, he teamed up again with Catherine, and they subsequently committed more thefts. David returned to jail, and Catherine, too, was imprisoned for 6 months in a detention center, and her infant child was taken away by welfare authorities. But behind bars, she was convinced by an officer her life would be better without David upon release. So, encouraged by the parole officer, Catherine began working for the McLaughlin family as a housekeeper. That picture is of her marrying Donald McLaughlin on her 21st birthday, and she subsequently had 7 children.
You know, there's these things called birth control getting fixed.
This is back in the time in the 70s where you couldn't get birth control. It was illegal.
I mean, condoms still existed.
Really?
Just say there was ways to prevent all 7 children.
There were ways. However, this was back in a time where men can do what they wanted with their wives and there would be no repercussions.
That's fair.
Have you heard of the movie Chicago?
The Cell Black Tango.
So they would have 7 children in total, but tragedy struck when the first, Donnie Jr., was hit and unalived by a car in their driveway. Well, he was just an infant, and an accident that was witnessed by Catherine. A council employee, Donald, supported their burgeoning family until a back inquiry incapacitated him, and the family was forced into government housing property, which is known as council property. Catherine proved unskilled at keeping house, and the children ran amok. Amok. David, meanwhile, had married a woman by the name of Carrie, and they had a child, but by about 1983, Catherine and David began starting to see each other again and embarked on an affair while she was still married to Donald and while he was still married to Carrie. In 1985, Catherine left her husband and 6 children. The youngest was 3 years old, to live with David. And the couple were never legally married, but Catherine changed her surname by a deed poll, which is apparently a thing you can do. David got a job selling car parts at a record jar in Myrie, a 4-minute drive from their house. And he was known as reliable, trustworthy, intelligent, and, get this, happy-go-lucky.
Yeah, because he's getting laid constantly.
She was like, whenever you want it.
If she had a choice.
No, she always wanted to have relations with him. So at home, where neighbors considered them quiet people who kept to themselves. I can't say that. Okay.
Try this again.
Take 2. At home, where neighbors considered them quiet people who kept to themselves, the Birnies smoked Mary Jane, took IV stuff that you're not supposed to, because we can't say that word, and prescription narcotics, because we can't say the other word. So David wanted schmecks up to 6 times a day and would inject anesthetic into his schlong to extend his performance. I told you it was going to get worse. It gets worse.
It always gets worse.
We got 2 Billy Mays on this episode. Let's see if we can do more. So, he needed constant gratification, and the pair experimented with toys. There is nothing wrong with that. We do not shame in this household.
It's just how they use said toys is the shaming part.
It's dysfunctional at best. So David did several more stints in prison for theft and began having fantasies about violating and unaliving victims. David told Catherine she would help him kidnap, bind, and violate a young woman, and she too would try to achieve, as she put it, maximum results. Catherine was a willing participant in everything that happened after this, whether it was for herself or just to keep David happy. She was often described as calculating, a manipulator behind the victims, and her psychopathic partner, David. Sometimes called the puppeteer of their deadly scheme, Catherine would scan the streets as they drove around searching for vulnerable young women or women who were hitchhiking or waiting at bus stops. When she spotted someone she liked, she would signal to David by saying, "I've got the munchies." If David approved of the potential victim, he would reply, "I've got the munchies too," sealing that particular person's fate. The pair's unaliving spree took place in the spring of '86 when she was only 35. In September, he placed an advertisement in a local paper to lure potential victims. It read, quote, "Urgent, looking for a lonely person. Prefer female, 18 to 24 years. Share single room flat." Over a period of 5 weeks, the Birnies abducted 5 women, girls. Let's just do girls. Aged 15 to 31. All the victims except for one were violated at the couple's residence at Moorhouse Street and subsequently unalived. There was only one that escaped, and we'll get to her last, okay? The one exception was their final victim, who escaped the day after her abduction and led police back to the house, thus ending their crime spree. So here is the house on Moorhouse Street. It's quite an unassuming house.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't assume anything nefarious happened there, but also can't judge books by their covers, obviously.
It's landscaped, it's nice, the windows aren't broken. The house looked beautiful from some of the crime scene photos I saw. However, a lot of bad things still happen there. So now that we got the nasty background on these two, let's talk about the victims. First up, we have, excuse me, my keyboard's like, no, you can't press that key. We have Mary Frances Margaret Nielsen. She was born on November 12th, 1963. She was just 22 years old at the time of her unaliving. She was also a psychology student at the University of Western Australia and a part-time delicatessen worker. She met David at a car wrecker's shop where he worked. He offered to sell her some cheap tires for her car and subsequently gave her his phone number. October 6, 1986, upon visiting the Moorhouse Street house, she was gagged and chained to a bed and violated by David while Catherine watched. She was then taken to Glen Eagle near Albany Highway in Bedfordale, where she was violated again and throat hugged with a nylon cord. David then knifed her, thinking it would speed up her decomp, as he, quote, read that in a book somewhere. Catherine then joined him, burying her in a shallow grave. Believe it or not, she received her degree posthumously. Humorously. You know the word.
I'm glad she still got her degree, but I hate that all that happened to her.
I am too. The university where she was getting her degree, she was only a semester shy, and they gave her her degree after death, which I do have to applaud the university for doing that. The next one we have, I like her name. I mean, I like all of their names, but I like her name the best because I have a friend by the name of Candy. That is her legal name. It's on her license, and it always gets a kick out of any police officer who pulls her over. Her name's Candy. This is Susanna Susie Candy. It would be another 2 weeks before they honed in on their next victim. Susie was born on December 1st, 1969, and she was only 16 when her life was taken. She was a 15-year-old high school student from Nedlands and was abducted while hitchhiking along the Sterling Highway in Claremont. Once she entered their car, she was bound and held at knife point. They forced her to send letters to her family to assure them that she was, quote, all right and fine. They then took her to the Moorhouse Street house and subjected her to the same ordeal as their previous victim, Mary. Afterwards, after an abortive attempt to throat hug Susanna with a cord, they forced sleeping pills down her throat. Once they took effect, David put the cord around her neck and told Catherine to prove her undying love to him by unaliving the girl herself. Of course, she complied and unalived Susanna while David watched. They then buried her close to Mary's gravesite in Glen Eagle. When asked later why she unalived Susanna, Catherine stated, quote, because I wanted to see how strong I was within my inner self. I didn't feel a thing. It was like I expected. I prepared to follow him to the end of the earth and do anything to see that his desires were satisfied. She was a female. Females hurt and destroy males. End quote.
There's so many other ways to find out how strong you are. I don't know, lift weights, do things out of the ordinary, not, knife somebody.
One can hope. But then again, we have instances like this.
That's fair.
So it would be another 2 weeks before they chose their third victim. Her name was Nolene Gladys Peterson. I like the name Nolene too. Then again, I like older names,
That's fair.
Nolene was born on March 28th, 1955. She was a flight attendant at the time of her death. She was described as elegant and charming, and at the time of her unaliving, she was a bar manager at the Nedlands Golf Club. November 1st of 86, 31-year-old Nolene ran out of fuel on Canning Highway while on her way home from her job. Nolene was picked up by the Birnies, and similar to the first two victims, she was forcibly taken to the Moorhouse Street house and repeatedly violated by David. They originally decided to unalive Nolene that same night, but David kept her as a, quote, prisoner of the house for 3 days amid apparent emotional attachment to the woman. If you look at Catherine's photo and look at Nolene's photo, what can you tell?
I mean, they started developing a type.
What does Nolene look like?
Let's say it.
She looks just like Catherine. You don't see it in the facial structure?
No, I do. I just don't want to say it because I didn't. It felt icky.
Well, this whole case is freaking icky. Okay?
This is also true.
So, Catherine quickly became jealous of David giving Nolene all of this attention and gave him an ultimatum. Either you unalive her, or she would unalive her herself. He immediately forced an overdose of narcotics down her throat and throat hugged her while she slept. They took her body to Glen Eagle but buried it away from the others, stating she needed to not be with them. David said that. Catherine reportedly got her pleasure from throwing sand on the victim's face as she buried her. This is where things started to escalate.
Of course it does.
Because wait, there's more. The fourth victim was only a mere 4 days later when they abducted her, Denise Karen Brown. And I know what you're saying. Her name is Karen. It's Keren, not your typical Karen name. She was only 21 years old when she was unalived, born on August 16th, 1965. She was a computer operator at the time of her death, also known as IT. On November 5th, the Birnies abducted her from a bus stop on Sterling Highway. In the same fashion as the earlier victims, Denise was abducted at Knife Point and assaulted at the Moorhouse Street house. I keep saying that, and it keeps being weird every single time, but it's fine. The following afternoon, Denise was taken to Wanneroo Pine Plantation, where, in the seclusion of the forest, David violated her again in the couple's car while they waited for darkness. After dragging Denise from the car, he violated her once more and knifed her in the neck. Convinced that she was dead, they dug a shallow grave and laid her body in it, but she sat up once she was placed in the grave. So then he grabbed an axe and hit her in the head and then buried her again. This was when things took a turn. I know you're saying things have already taken a turn, but it gets good. Not bad.
I was about to say, we're sure on a twisty, turny road because it keeps taking turns.
And another left turn, and another left turn. The next victim was taken 4 days later when they abducted her, but this is where their story changes. And I have to say, when doing this research, I was like, good. Because they got sloppy, which we already know. We're those people who sit in the bed, watching true crime, eating snacks, going, look at them. They got sloppy. How stupid can they be? Whereas if we were in that situation, we'd be screaming, running around in circles when everything's on fire, like that episode from Community. Sound about right?
Pretty much.
Meet Kate Moore. On November 9th, 17-year-old Kate Moore was abducted at Knife Point, accepting a ride from the Birnies. David held her with a knife to her throat and forced her to call her mother. Kate told her mother that she had too much to drink and was staying at a friend's house, hoping her mother would realize it was a ruse and call a friend, knowing she didn't drink. Kate later stated she asked them if they intended to unalive her or violate her and was informed, "We will only violate you if you're good." She was then forced to dance for the Birnies.
I can't. I
think I found the new face for the website.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. So, she was then forced to dance for the couple and then slept in their bed while handcuffed to David. This was where she was not only fearing for her life, but where she was violated repeatedly. The next day, you're not laughing at that. You're laughing at the photo that I sent you because her...
Yes, I'm laughing at the photo, not at the case.
We need a little happy in our lives. Come on now. So she was violated repeatedly in bed. David went to work the next day, and Catherine went to the front door to carry out a deal regarding narcotics and forgot to chain Kate back to the bed. So, of course, It was at this point she was like, I'm going to break free. I want to break free. I want to break free. We love Queen. So she broke the lock of a nearby window and climbed through it, but hit her head on the concrete. After knocking on various neighbors' doors, she jumped a gate and was attacked by David's dog. She ran to a nearby vacuum cleaner shop, informing the owner she had been violated and abducted. When she finally walked into the police station claiming she had been kidnapped and assaulted, the 22-year-old constable, Laura Hancock, who was assigned to interview her, even though she had never taken a statement before. She was a rookie cop, and nobody believed Kate's story. Said she was just fabricating lies. They brushed her off as a hysterical teenager and was like, you're a woman, you handle this. Because of course they did. Her story soon revealed something far more horrifying. She was the only survivor of a brutal killing spree carried out by David and Catherine Birnie, who would later be known as the Moorhouse Murderers. It was Detective Hancock who pushed the investigators to finally take Kate seriously. So Kate detailed everything to the police. While some of the officers were initially skeptical of her story, the 22-year-old constable, Laura Hancock, believed her from the onset due to the amount of detail she provided, including the address and the telephone number. And David's name. His full name. The Birnies had given themselves aliases, but Kate had read David's name on a medicine bottle, which, here's that. It was just on the table.
Because they never expected anybody to leave the house alive besides them, so it didn't matter.
Correct. The mention of David Birnie, who had a significant criminal record already, the Major Crimes Unit took an interest and began to listening more intently. This is the main reason why a lot of men and women don't report that they are victims of crimes, is because when someone treats them like they're crying wolf, whereas they really are victims themselves. Which, at the end of this episode, like I normally do, I will post a disclaimer, like I always do. Kate said the couple had watched the Rocky video on film and described a drawing she had concealed in the house prior to her escaping as proof of her being there. She had hid a few other things. Like, you're going to find this here, you're going to find this here, you're going to find this here, to prove she was in the house. Subsequently, police found the drawing and the video cassette copy of Rocky in their VCR. The Birnies were then subsequently arrested, and during their interviews, they gave conflicting information. Catherine stated she had denied ever meeting Kate, while David insisted Kate would come to their house voluntarily and engage in consensual, sexual relations. Say that 20 times fast.
They should have got their story straight before they went in, but, they didn't exactly have time to get their shit together.
Of course not. And Detective Sergeant Vince Patch convinced David to confess and reveal where the previous victims have been buried. Note, there are other possible victims, which I'm going to send you the screenshot of the page. There's speculation that the Birnies were responsible for the disappearance of 2 women, Cheryl Renwick, May of 86, and Barbara Western, June of 86. It has also been suggested that David was responsible for the disappearance of Lisa Marie Mott in 1980. However, his first wife accounted to his whereabouts the day that Mott had disappeared, and that crime still remains unsolved. So, let's get to the arrest, because this was good. So good. When the officers arrived at 3 Moorhouse Street, no one was home. And when Catherine arrived back, she was arrested and David was found at work, taken into custody. They were interviewed in separate rooms and the pair revealed little to nothing. David claimed the young girl had willingly gone to the house to smoke and willingly have relations with him. Finally, one detective said to David, "It's getting dark. Why don't you just show me where the bodies are?" To his surprise, David went, "Okay, there's 4 of them." I told you it was going to get good.
I'm sure that detective's jaw just went straight to the floor, into the basement. Like, that actually worked. That never works.
It's not TV, dude. It totally worked. Told about David's confession, Catherine broke her silence. The detectives decided they would take the couple in handcuffs to the grim discovery of where the bodies were to be found. That's not why I'm laughing. I'm laughing because it's preposterous. How he just was flagrant with it.
Doesn't even happen in the movies.
It doesn't. So late Monday night on the edge of the pine forest in Ganagra, 30 kilometers north of Perth, the team detectives found their first shallow grave. Between the lines of trees, the naked remains of Miss Brown had been lying there for almost a week. Before sunrise, the team had traveled across the city and south about 80 kilometers to Glen Eagle, looking for 3 more graves. After some initial problems finding the burial grounds, they drove up a bush track and began digging at a spot indicated by David. Another short drive, more digging, and another body was found, and these were the remains of Miss Nielsen and Susanna. Catherine wanted to show them the next grave, which was Nolene's. Back to the highway, along yet another track, lay a body covered with gravel. That was Nolene's, and when she saw it, Catherine spat on the body. On November 12th, police charged Catherine and David with each 4 counts of unaliving, 2 counts of aggravated sexual assault on the 17-year-old girl, and 1 count of depraved liberty, which is kidnapping. On November 13th, a team of 10 workers and 2 excavators began lifting sections of drain in Harrison Street around the corner from Birnie's house. Workers laying pipes had several months earlier found pieces of bone, a pair of shoes, and women's underwear on the property. It wasn't until the Birnie murders were revealed that they acted on it. The police searched the drain for 4 hours but found nothing further of consequence. A 19-year-old female later came forward about the unalivings when it hit the news. She claimed she was walking home from university when a couple tried to, quote, pick her up and take her with them. She felt uneasy about getting in the car when she saw what she assumed to be a young boy or girl laying prone in the back seat.
I mean, that would give me pause too.
Body was that of Miss Brown, drugged by sleeping pills and passed out. The student declined the ride and the car soon drove away. Her description of the driver and the woman in the passenger seat matched perfectly with David and Catherine. So, when it was sent to trial, David pleaded guilty to 4 counts of unaliving and 1 count of each abduction and violation. When asked why he pleaded guilty, he gestured towards the victim's family and said, quote, it's the least I can do. He was sentenced to 4 terms of life imprisonment. Justice, not judge, justice. Elkin Wallace sentenced David to life in prison, stamping his record with a actual stamp that says never to be released. No parole, do not pass go, do not collect from Bethany Lopez. The judge remarked, quote, each of these horrible crimes were premeditated, planned, and carried out cruelly and relentlessly over a comparatively short period. He should never be let out of prison. After being found sane enough to stand trial, Catherine was also sentenced to 4 terms of life imprisonment by the Supreme Court of Western Australia. Although Catherine received the same sentence, she was given a minimum term that would make her eligible for parole in 2007.
Did she get parole in 2007?
Wait.
I don't want to wait.
Tough cookies! She was dragged kicking and screaming and spitting to the van that would take her to prison. The public screamed at David, and he then smiled and blew them all a kiss. Under the law at the time, both were required to serve 20 years before being eligible for parole. Initially, David was held at the maximum security Fremantle prison, but he was soon moved to solitary confinement to keep him from coming to harm from other prisoners.
That part I'm not surprised about.
I'm not either, but it gets better. David continued his violence in prison, was often in fights, beaten up, and spent time in the infirmary. Catherine blamed herself for their capture and told one visitor, "I could have stopped the girl. I should have, but it all had to come to an end." 3 of the original death row cells were converted for him, and he stayed there until prison was closed in 1991. The cell can occasionally be viewed on the true crime tour held daily at the Fremantle prison. While incarcerated, the Birnies exchanged more than 2,600 letters, but were not allowed any form of other contact. Unfortunately, but fortunately for us, David was found unalived in his cell at the Casarona prison October 7th, 2005. If I butchered that, I do apologize. That is a hard word. At 4:30 a.m. local time. I put he was 54 years old, and I said, good, I hope he suffered. An inquest found out that he had hanged himself from an air vent using a length of cord. Various factors led to his unaliving. A failure to provide him with his antidepressants had exacerbated his depression. His computer had been confiscated, and he was suspected of schmegsually assaulting another prisoner. He was described by a former prison officer as a, quote, model prisoner who looked after injured animals. Catherine was not allowed to attend the funeral.
You know who is also a model citizen in prison? Gacy.
And Dahmer. The people Dahmer. Catherine was imprisoned at Bandiap women's prison. Since being incarcerated, she worked as a prison librarian and appeared in a prison production of Nonsense about nuns. That same year, Kate Moore began a campaign. Excuse me. Try that again. That same year, Kate Moore began a campaign to end Western Australian laws that automatically put convicts up for parole every 3 years. While in prison, Catherine had expressed her sorrow for her victims, in particular the youngest, 15-year-old Susanna Candy. Catherine took up painting and began working in the prison library more often. In 2007, she applied for parole, and although found to be at low risk for reoffending, it was rejected because of the extreme nature of her crimes. Her parole application was rejected by then Attorney General of Western Australia, Jim McGinty, and said that her release was unlikely while he remained in office. The decision made her the third Australian woman, after the third, Catherine Knight and Patricia Byers, to have her papers marked never to be released. On March 14, 2009, a new Western Australian Attorney General, Christian Porter, following requests from the victim's family, determined she would stay in jail for life. In 2009, she became the center of a security scare at the Bandiap prison, where she was alleged to carry a knife. Her case was reviewed again in January 2010, and her appeal of this decision was turned down once again, March 2010, by Porter. In 2013, her application was again rejected. Under WA law, Catherine's case for parole must be reviewed every 3 years in accordance, and in 2016, the review board recommended to never release her. Her fourth bid for parole was declined again in 2016, and also in 2016, Kate Moore launched the petition to end victims' re-traumatization by possibility of their attackers getting parole. In 2017, her youngest son, Catherine's youngest son, who is under the alias Peter, called for her execution stating that his relation to her has resulted in him being assaulted on multiple occasions. He also supports Kate Moore's campaign. Also in 2017, the daughter of a missing woman since 1986 came forward to say that she believes her mother may have been unalived by David and Catherine. In fact, after the Birnie's arrest, police reviewed a list of missing females, and it included her mother, Cheryl Renwick. Michelle Renwick was 14 years old when her mother, Cheryl, vanished. In the months before Cheryl's disappearance, Michelle remembers her mother being terrified that a man and a woman were stalking her. Overnight between Sunday, May 25th, and Monday, May 26, 1986, Cheryl just disappeared from her apartment. Out of her character, she failed to show up at her office to work and was not home to meet her daughters returning from a weekend at their father's house. The following week, her car was found abandoned at the Perth airport, but police could find no evidence that she had traveled by plane, bus, or train. Her bank accounts were untouched and had never been touched since. Michelle told Channel 7's Murderer Uncovered she believes the Birnies were involved. Following the Birnies' 1996 arrest, police invited Michelle and her younger sister to look through clothes, jewelry, and other items found at the Moorhouse Street home to see if they recognized anything that could possibly be her mother's, because they did take items that belonged to the victims. Police later told Cheryl's case did not fit with the Birnies' MO. But Michelle is haunted by the possibilities that they could be responsible and that there's too many coincidences to discount them. She said that she wants Catherine Birnie to say if they did unalive Cheryl and reveal where the body's buried so they can at least get some closure. Due for another parole review this year, 2026. Catherine's hopes were dashed in 2018 when the WA Attorney General introduced a new law into Parliament. John Quigley drafted new laws that meant rules following, even allowing the worst of unalivers to apply for parole every 3 years, would be removed from their constitution. This meant persons convicted of 3 or more unalivings on the one day or 2 or more unalivings on different days could be banned from ever having parole consideration for up to 6 years. He paid tribute to Kate Moore when announcing the proposed law changes. So, I briefly mentioned this earlier. We're now getting to the end of today's topic. Media. It was focused on Tubi, right? So the case was included on season 1, episode 6, The Moorhouse Horrors of Crime Investigation Australia, first aired in 2005. The case formed an episode on Australian families of crime from the 9 Network Australia. It was covered by Case File True Crime Podcast on August 27th of 2016. November 9th, 2017, it was discussed by Georgia Hardstark in an episode of My Favorite Murder. It was a detailed episode on episode 75 of True Crime All the Time podcast. 2016 Australian film Hounds of Love is based on several of the unalivings, but most closely resembles the Moorhouse unalivings. Both Catherine and David Birnie were featured on Deadly Women, an 8th episode of season 3 of Fatal Obsession, and the case was covered by Morbid on a May 8th. Oh, ironically enough, May 8th. Yay! Another May 8th episode. 2021, a 2-part episode entitled Catherine and David. The case was also covered by Serial Holic podcast, and the Birnie's house in Fremantle still stands today. Now at 67 years old, Catherine Birnie has the dubious notoriety of being Western Australia's most high-profile serial unaliver. She's at Brandy Women's maximum security prison still, as the longest-serving inmate and shares a prison wing with a vampire wheelie bin killer, wheelie bin unaliver, Jessica Staskanowski. And that is the tale of the Birnies.
I hated all of it. But I'm glad we got this done and over with.
Oh, me too. I hated researching it. Just to give you some clarification, they weren't all buried at the same location. The last one was the only one that changed geography-wise.
Right, you mentioned that.
That made my throat dry.
It was a lot of talking. Lots of big words for Elmo.
So many big words for Elmo. Meanwhile, my husband has blown up my phone.
Why you no love me? Why you no answer me? I'm busy recording, sir.
Like, come on. Meanwhile, we're going to get off of here. I'm going to call her, and we're going to discuss some other stuff that has nothing to do with this case.
And then I'm going to go to bed and go, so I can go to work tonight.
Yeah, I almost called you last night because I was terrified you weren't going to wake up in time, because she wakes up at 3 o'clock and goes, I forgot to set my alarm. Okay, going back to bed. Good night. And I was like, it's a good thing you woke up. I was supposed to call her after therapy.
Was that yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like, I'm dealing with stupid kids at work right now, so. Oh, my days are running together. It's been the longest week ever.
It has. And it's only Thursday. I can't believe it's Thursday.
Right? I know. I'm like, what day is it? What year is it? I have no clue.
Would Alexandra be your cousin-in-law? Your niece-in-law?
It'd be my niece-in-law.
She's
Or
so
just my
adorable.
niece. I know
She's
she
so-
is. I love her.
And then we have the Afro Man stuff that's been blasted all over social media. And I'm just sitting here going, you want to play a victim to a guy who literally makes parodies for a living. That's what he got famous for. Because he was making fun of Cheech and Chong with the Because I Got High video and the song. And they broke into his house because they said, oh, they thought he had drugs. Afro Man's not that stupid, man. He acts up.
Instead, you pissed off somebody who had security cameras.
And they cut the security camera wires too. And he's just like, you touched my property. You pointed pew-pews at my kids. I'm going to come after you. And they're like, oh my God, you hurt me. And he's just like, suck it up, Buttercup.
First Amendment. Anyways, I think that's all for today.
That is it for today. Stay feral.
Bite the hand.
And we'll see you guys next time. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Well, party possums, that's today's dose of the Pandemonium. Thanks for listening and watching the AudiHD chaos. Review, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Tune in next week for more continued madness. And as always, stay feral.